You're listening to The Stories Your City Forgot, a podcast about the human side of history. I'm Justin Mattson, and today we're talking about buildings, not just the iconic ones, but the quiet, everyday spaces that carry memory, identity, and meaning. In this episode, we're going to talk about preservation, public memory, family lore, and why saving a house or a corner store might just mean saving a piece of who we are. With that in mind, let's let our guest introduce himself.
I'm Emily Fritchman Mahaney. I'm a lecturer in the Department of History at Boise State University, and I'm also a fifth-generation Boisean. I teach classes in a variety of subjects, but most notably, I teach a class on ethics in Idaho history, Intro to American History, and then an upper division Idaho history class as well. And I love working with college students. It's been one of the great joys of my life. But generally, I also love just working with the public and telling them all about Idaho's history and Boise's history. Previously, and even to this day, I've done a lot of work as a tour guide and as a docent at the Old Idaho Penitentiary, and now I do a lot of work with Preservation Idaho, giving community members and visitors guided tours of different historic sites in Boise, which is also something that I really love. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm excited to talk.
Yeah, and you actually work on a very, kind of talking about being a docent, you work on a very interesting walking tour. Kind of around Boise. I've never personally participated in a walking tour, but tell me a little bit about what your walking tour includes and kind of, what is it?
Yeah. Thank you for asking. So I actually do a variety of different tours. The one that I'm working on right now for the summer is actually in partnership with Preservation Idaho. I'm giving a historic walking tour of Boise State University, which is a really fascinating tour, highlighting a variety of old buildings and sort of telling the story of the university over time. But generally, when I give walking tours of downtown Boise, as many historians, we really like doing things chronologically. So talking about that's just what we do.
Yeah. we do love a good timeline.
Right, that's right. Although, actually, in addition to doing things chronologically, I also like doing things thematically. So talking about not only when these different parts of downtown Boise were established, but sort of how they connect to the story of Boise as a whole, whether it be commercially or industrially, in terms of entertainment, that kind of thing. So my little downtown walking tour is about a 6-block radius, and we talk about everything from, historic old Boise to the development of things like the Egyptian theater, the construction of great hotels and buildings like the Eidenhof. It's a lot of fun. I love giving tours. I always tell people that I was meant to be a tour guide and somehow found my way into the history discipline, and the two sort of fit together very nicely.
They do work together really nicely because it is fascinating to be able to walk around, especially in a nice walkable city, which there aren't like a whole lot of those. So like if you find an area that's walkable, you should really hold on to that and never let go. And so when you're giving your walking tour, around that 6-block radius, what are some of the things that you're saying and talking about?
Ooh, that's a great question. Do you mean in terms of the buildings themselves, the stories of the people? Because I talk about a lot of stuff in a very short period of time.
Yeah, why not both? Well, when
Yeah.
you're saying the buildings, what are you talking about in the buildings? And then what's a story from your walking tour that you just can't get over?
Ooh, okay. So I've gotta play the nepotism card just a little bit because I think it's fun and kind of unique. So
You don't get to use it every day.
exactly. Unfortunately. So something that's actually really personal, and part of why I love Boise so much is, as I mentioned, I'm fifth generation. So my family's been here for about 120 years, and downtown, right off of Capitol Boulevard, there's the Egyptian Theater on one corner, but if you go across the street, you'll see there's a building called the Fritchman Building. And the building houses like Goldie's Cafe and Goldie's Corner. It's a beautiful building, and it's actually the oldest commercial building in downtown Boise. But that building was actually first operated and owned by Peralt, but later on, the building was purchased by my great-great-grandfather, Harry Fritchman. And he operated sort of like a commercial and private business outside of the building. And much later on, he would actually be one of the principal investors in the Egyptian Theater right across the street. So I tell that story not just because it's personal, but it's because as human beings, I think we like being connected to our family's histories and our family's stories. So in addition to telling this, piece of family history, I also encourage people to think about their own families and their own histories, and how when they walk around maybe their hometowns, how we can see traces of our own history in the buildings that we're looking at. So that's a story I always like to tell, just because I think it's sort of fun and interesting. But it also connects a lot of these different buildings that you can see from one spot together. So I think it's really fun. A little bit of nepotism, but it's really fun.
Oh, just a little bit. And so what are some of the other buildings? You mentioned the Egyptian Theater. What's going on there? I haven't spent a whole lot of time in Boise, despite actually being from Idaho.
Oh, really? Wow. Well, the Egyptian, I and many other folks in the preservation community consider it to be like the crown jewel in terms of architecture in downtown Boise.
It looks neat.
The Egyptian Yeah, oh, it's amazing. And if you ever get a chance to go inside, it's like you'll just be blown away by all the beauty. I mean, it's just so beautiful in so many ways. The theater was first opened in the 1920s, of course, as part of the onset of the Egyptomania that was taking place in the United States. And the theater went through many iterations during its operational years. First beginning as the Egyptian Theater, and they had this beautiful historic organ that accompanied a lot of great silent movies at the theater during the time of vaudeville performances, and later on the advent of silent movies. And then later on, the theater changed names many times, from the Fox to the Ada. Ownership changed hands quite a few times. And in the 1960s and 70s, Boise actually went through this period that you might be familiar with. Harper's Weekly, or Harper's Bazaar, I believe, said that the city of Boise may be the first American city to deliberately eradicate itself, because we were going through this period of urban, which is a great thing to be known by.
Yeah, what an awesome sentence to have. So it might be the first city to obliterate itself off the face
Exactly.
of the earth. What an awesome sentence.
Exactly. Oh, this is fantastic. In the 1960s, we went through this redevelopment wave where much of downtown Boise was being destroyed, the historic buildings, with the intention to build this giant outdoor mall, sort of like a combined commercial and residential space. And the Egyptian Theater was one of the buildings that was slated to be demolished. And we lost many beautiful buildings during this time, including the old City Hall. And the Egyptian was slated to be demolished. And a group of people originally rallied together to save the organ that was inside the Egyptian Theater, because the organ is sort of special in and of itself. It's only one of, I believe, a few that were made. So it's a very special organ.
Oh.
But then from there, a group of folks really rallied and said, you know what, the building needs to be saved as well. And that was when Earl Hardy came in and decided to purchase the building and save it. And his daughter actually continues to run and own the building today. And the building has been through so many beautiful restorations during its time. And today you can see the inside has just been beautifully restored. I mean, so much detail went into everything from the fixtures to the paint. And it's just a beautiful building. And it's now... It still serves as an entertainment venue. So different organizations like Opera Idaho and different, comedians will come and use the venue. And it's just it's a beautiful space.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, the, wave of redevelopment in downtown that ended up getting rid of, old historic buildings, because that's actually a trend we've seen across the United States. It's not quite particular to Boise. I know that up here in Anchorage, where I'm currently at now, there have been a number of historic buildings that have been, destroyed or tore down for future development. And, that's a plot from, a movie, the evil developer gets rid of the childhood home, right? It's such a cliche plot, because it's so real. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
And, what do you think it is that we only start to care about these buildings when they're about to be destroyed? Why do you think What do you think? What do you think happens there?
Yeah. Oh, that's such a great question. And it's so true. I mean, you think of, I always think of the movie Up, where it's like he's got his little house and then he's got
Yes.
all these apartments, and and it's so funny. That's actually such a pertinent question right now because Boise is growing so quickly. And people who even moved away like 10 years ago come back to Boise and they're like, oh my God, there are all these apartment buildings and these hotels that are going up in these places that used to be really tiny, quaint little neighborhoods. And part of my research and studies as a graduate student was on the development and emergence of these urban neighborhood associations. And neighborhood associations in urban centers often emerge in response to some kind of threat. And like the threat we're talking about of the demolition of our neighborhoods, why do we only start getting really impassioned and interested when the things we love are going to go away?
Yeah.
And I think that's a really difficult question to answer. But in my own experience, as much as we try to sometimes maybe as as teenagers and as young people, we want to leave our homes and go somewhere new and explore and try things that are different. But I think deep down, all of us feel connected to our hometowns or our childhood homes in some way, whether it be where we went to school or the place where we grew up or our grandparents' house where we spent the most time. Because I think places and spaces really serve as a reflection of ourselves in some way or another. And I think when there's this threat that these places we love that hold so many fond memories for all of us will no longer exist, I think people rally around that because, again, like buildings represent the community, they represent individuals, they represent shared values, perhaps. And that's why when we're afraid, oh, these things are going to go away, we tend to come together and do something about it.
Yeah, it's really interesting. The Up one is like a good analogy. I was thinking RoboCop for some reason. Like I just
Oh,
went
yeah.
like the evil real estate developer goes after the entire
Yes.
city. Um, it's just such a it's everywhere. It's such a pertinent plot line.
Yeah.
What does being proactive in the space of protecting your historic buildings look like? So I'm from Twin Falls, and they have historic buildings everywhere. It seems like every
Yes.
building is on the National Registry of Historic Places. Does that matter? What does that effort look like? And kind of what am I looking for here? Is I it does every building need to be on the historic registry? Because I click through Twin and it's like every residential home, every single building. It's kind of crazy. There's street lights that are on the residential building registry.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah, wow, just coming loaded with all the great questions.
I do what I
Um,
can.
well, can I answer your question with another question? Can I
Yeah,
be one of those people?
of course.
What do you think? Do you think that every building should be marked? Do you think every bench and streetlight should be marked? What do you think?
I don't know. I think it depends on the town. Twin Falls is really interesting because I think it's laid out really well, which is not something you can say about a lot of cities. Like I think Twin Falls is actually like pretty well set up. You've got your residential area and it's not terribly like it's not close to the canyon, but like Twin Falls would have an excellent trolley system. They would kill with a trolley system, as
Yeah.
most places would. I love a good public transit on rails.
Oh, me too.
But I do think that it is interesting that like every single home, right? Like I'm clicking through and it's just like, wow, there's a map, and then you zoom in on the map and there's thousands of dots.
Yeah.
So I just think that's really interesting because there's so much effort and work put into it,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think Twin Falls, man, that's a really great example. Yeah, Twin has done so many things really well in terms of historic preservation. But in terms of sort of this original question of how do we determine what's saved? Is it worth saving these buildings? This is a question that I always pose to my students because we talk a lot about historic preservation in my intro class. And we, as preservationists, I think for the most part, all of us are like, I wish we could save every building everywhere and just all the time. Really,
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
because I think every building is special. I think every building has a story to share. But on a practical level, there's also this question of, well, there are a lot of houses that are falling apart, or a lot of houses that would be difficult to restore. Um, And especially in a place like Boise, this question of housing, do we restore a historic building, or do we build a new apartment complex? And I'm always of the mindset and the mentality that actually the best option is to use what we've got and to make them livable and beautiful, functional. And I think that's what serves the community best, is maintaining and restoring what we have. I think environmentally speaking, I think that's the best in terms of funding. I think that's the best as well. But there's always this question of what's the most practical, and in terms of utilitarianism, like what will do the greatest good for the greatest number of people. So when you are looking at these different historic buildings, and when you're crafting these like National Register nominations, you have to make an argument for the building's significance in some way. And a lot of the buildings in the River Street neighborhood, we ask these questions a lot. Architecturally, are they really significant or special or unique in some way? Yes, in many cases, but maybe not in other cases. So then we determine, is there a story behind this building that's really, really important? A story that would otherwise not be captured well if the building were no longer there. And in the case of, middle income neighborhoods like River Street, that's a question that's really important to consider and ask. What are the stories behind these buildings? And will people fully understand the history and the meaning behind, these buildings if they were no longer there? Because there's always this question too of, well, we can just tear the building down and put a plaque there instead. Like, just put a plaque down. A plaque is fine. But I don't think it captures that story in the same way. That's just my opinion. That's
Right.
the preservationist hat. But yeah, it's a great question, and one that I think we should all think about and consider for sure.
The plaque is really funny, as if it's any substitute for the real building or the real history, because most people just kind of look at the plaque and go, all right, yeah, yeah, sure, yeah, there
Yeah.
used to be something here that's like everything. But I mean,
Right.
it's different when you can see it, right? You can walk around downtown Boise or River Street and see these historic buildings. Would you tear down the Capitol building, right? Not to say every house is the Capitol building, but they all kind of have the same kind of like neighborhood story origins. And it's a little different when you're talking community spaces, right? So when you're talking like the Egyptian theater, like people would go there and they all enjoy a show, and you can kind of see the development of your city based on the shows that are playing there, the way you attract different audiences. The thing that I think is really interesting is the way we've like started to, how do I want to word this? You ever get on TikTok?
Oh yes, unfortunately.
Every so often I scroll through TikTok, and the way the algorithm works, I'm inevitably drawn into some like history that's like evil, right? It's just kind of like, I don't know if you've seen these, but they're the reject modernity, embrace tradition type memes, and for me, they always show up in the form of these like architecture questions.
Yeah.
Reject modernity, embrace tradition, and the buildings that they're rejecting are the giant skyrise towers and like these kinds of things. But they never show like River Street. It's always like
Yeah.
the ancient Greeks or whatever, like the Colosseums. Why do you think that is, right? Like why the fascination with architecture is specifically going around what we would consider to be like your local architecture, because there's a lot of good stuff there.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful. Yeah, and I think as people, we tend to be fascinated by things that are extraordinary and exceptional. Something like the Colosseum, it's like, oh my God, I've never seen anything like this before.
Right.
It's just
Right.
it's like, this is incredible. Or the Empire State Building, this is incredible. But I think there's a lot of beauty to be found in the ordinary. And I think homes like the ones that you see on River Street, middle income homes that are built of, materials that are found nearby, I think they're just as fascinating and just as captivating. And I think as human beings, we can connect to that a bit better than we can something like the Empire State Building. But I think if something is deemed as maybe ordinary or something that's easy to replicate, somehow people find that that's more disposable or there's less value in that. And I certainly don't think that that's the case. But maybe that's what folks tend to think, oh, I could see this anywhere. There's nothing really unique or special about this because I can see it anywhere. And I think changing that mindset is something that's really important as architectural historians and preservationists. I think it's really important to change that, to transform that.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting because these memes, right? Like they got to me, and I'm nowhere near that level of like committed to the bit, as the young people would say. Like I'm not that committed to the buildings or attachments in that way. Like I am not someone who's like only the Colosseum should exist, or only right. Like I think that the individual buildings should exist because people live in them. I can't live in a Colosseum. It's not feasible. What is an ordinary building on River Street that you think is fascinating, but like that might fall under this category that we're talking about here?
Hmm. Well, I think, if you look at the walkabout tour, there are so many buildings, and we only had to choose like a handful for the tour to really highlight and to share. And I'm actually going to pull up the map here just to jog my memory because there are just so many wonderful buildings. But there are actually three that come to mind. And one of them is the Ed and Lucy Washington House, which is the first stop on the tour. It's at 522 South 14th Street.
Okay.
And it's a really, really sweet little yellow and blue house, single story, built of wood, very, very simple. But, and you walk by the house and you think to yourself, oh, this is really sweet. It's really, colorful.
It's cute. It's quaint. And
it's
you
cute. Yeah.
like it.
Yeah, it's adorable. I'm like, oh, this is the cutest little place. But then when you actually learn about the story behind the folks that lived in this house, you'll see why it's so important to keep and to maintain. Because again, I think when we can relate to something like a simple building and we see the stories of the people that lived in these buildings or the things that happened there, it can motivate and inspire us at times. It's like, wow, look at all the extraordinary things that happened in this really ordinary building, So Ed and Lucy Washington's home, I think, really strikes me. Another one that's really fascinating is the Earlene Browning house, which is at the end of the street on 502 South 14th. She has a really powerful story as well. Again, extraordinary things happening in ordinary places. And I'm happy to talk about those if you'd like.
Please.
But just, drawing attention to those spaces. So let me, if you'd like, because I love this story so much, I can tell you a little bit about that first house, the Ed and Lucy Washington.
Absolutely. I want to know about Ed and Lucy Washington.
Yeah, they're amazing. So as folks sort of take this walking tour, you'll be taken again, sort of chronologically on the story through River Street, from its early days as an early subdivision all the way up until the present. And the River Street neighborhood, in recent memory, always had this reputation as being a neighborhood on the other side of the tracks, right? Like every community has a neighborhood that's on the other side of the tracks. We don't go over there.
The
right?
South side. Don't go there, you'll get stabbed and robbed.
Exactly. It's like, wait a minute. And when you actually get into the story of River Street, you realize that it always had these very firm middle class and very culturally diverse roots. And what I love about the Ed and Lucy Washington house in particular is not only is it one of the oldest buildings in the neighborhood, but it was also owned and occupied by an African-American couple in the very, very early days of the neighborhood's story, which is something that was really exceptional, I think. Not only did we have, African Americans living in the neighborhood, but they were also, homeowners, which is really exceptional. And Ed and Lucy Washington actually moved to Boise around the turn of the century. They were already married when they moved into the River Street neighborhood and purchased this home. And something that was really striking is we knew that they owned the home when we were starting research on the project, but we didn't really know their story or who they were. But it's like, man, we know these folks lived here, but we know nothing about them. And as I started digging through the archives, I found more and more information about this couple. And Ed originally worked as a Pullman porter, as many Black men in America did post Civil War. And many of these folks found jobs along the railroad, as River Street once was before the connector was built. And Ed and Lucy had one son. And when their son was a teenager, I believe he was working at a hotel I believe he was a valet. And I found a hospital record that said he'd stepped on a nail or some sort of metal object when he was at work and died of tetanus.
Oh, wow, that escalated really quickly.
I know. Just awful, awful. And shortly after that, Ed actually became a minister, and Lucy became very involved in a local church choir. And the choir actually traveled around Idaho. I mean, this beautiful gospel choir traveled around the state. And actually, there are newspapers from all over Idaho talking about this gospel choir that Lucy was a part of. And Ed eventually passed away, I believe, of a heart attack when he was, I believe, in his 50s. So he wasn't very old. And Lucy continued to live in the house until her death, and they never had any other children. But Lucy hosted a variety of civic clubs in this home. And after she passed away, she actually had been creating a scholarship fund with the money that she'd earned and saved. A scholarship fund that eventually would go to African-American students who were attending college. And it's just a really beautiful story. And many of the stories of River Street we had known about or had been aware of. But this particular story, no one really knew because Ed and Lucy didn't have any living children after their son passed away. And it was so cool to uncover just all of this history just in this one tiny little house. The house that's not even really marked, right? And just it's so striking, the amazing story behind this simple little wooden house.
Yeah, and I think and sometimes the people that design these homes are fascinating. When I was in Twin Falls, you talk about the design of these homes, and you find out that they're all done by the same like three guys.
Yeah.
And then those three guys lived in the town, and they were all neighbors, and it's like what?
Yeah.
That's really, really fascinating. What does the process of researching a house look like? Because it's a little different from, like, I'm buying a home, right? Like,
Right.
I'm buying a home. Certainly that goes into it a little, like, resale value, but, like, what does it look like when you want to preserve that history? What does the research look like? How do you start?
Yeah, that's something that I think anyone who is a homeowner or certainly owns a historic home should know how to do because it's just so interesting. The first thing that I always do is I take a look at Sanborn maps, and all the Sanborn maps are the historian's best friend. Basically, old fire insurance maps that tell you what exactly was located in this neighborhood at this time. And the Sanborn maps are usually like about 10 to 20 years apart from each other. So you can easily identify, oh, this building wasn't here in 1912, but by 1930, we see it pop up. So sort of identifying around the period of time that the building was constructed is very helpful. If you have an address, even like a street number, looking up the address on say like digital newspaper indexes and seeing okay who was living here at this time, doing things like looking at census reports as well for each corresponding neighbor. Okay, who was living here, how many people were living here. There is quite a lot of work that goes into researching each of these old buildings. There are many historians that have previously nominated sites, whether it be a historic district or a building itself, for the National Register. And it's very easy to actually go and find National Register forms on the internet because it's so handy. And
Right.
sometimes I just love the internet. And then finding that National Register form, you're sometimes able to piece together that story a little bit more. There are a lot of moving parts that all come together to tell us the story of these places. But Sanborn maps, newspapers, census reports, they can all give us a good idea as to when these buildings came to be and then the stories that are found in them as well.
Yeah, I think it's really fascinating because your home is what I like to call the footnote of history. Like you're not really sure what's going on in there, but something probably did happen. It was probably crazy.
Right. Exactly.
Right? Like it's something probably happened in your house and it was probably crazy. And it doesn't have to be true crime.
Right. Exactly.
It does not have to be true crime at all.
Exactly. It can be, it can be nice. It can be fun, crazy. It doesn't have to be, wild.
Yeah, yeah, and when you say true crime, it doesn't even have to be murder true crime. It can be embezzling true crime.
Exactly. Ooh, yeah, the Bernie Madoff true crime.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I think it's really fascinating to take your home and then put it into that context. What do you think is the most important aspect of what when you give your tours? What do you want somebody to really be walking away with, other than the knowledge of like Boise, right? Like, what is there some overarching theme that you'd love for them to like? A tourist comes and they're my stupid brother lives here and I have to take a walking tour because he likes walking. Right? So like, what do you want guy who's like my stupid brother Gary dragged me here? What do you want that guy to take away?
Oh, I love those guys. I think
I'm sure
something
you
that.
see a ton of them.
Oh, yes. I love those guys. I think they're some of my favorites for this reason. I think, unfortunately, history and historic sites often have the reputation for being a little bit dry.
Mm.
I think that's something a lot of us have experienced. And maybe you'll go on a tour of, I don't know, Mount Vernon. I'm just throwing an example out there. It's like, ooh, this is maybe not like the sexiest or
Yeah, yeah.
the juiciest. But I think there's this wonderful transition that's happening. And when people come on a walking tour, there are so many people that are like, oh, yeah, my brother Gary's dragging me on this tour and I don't want to be here. But I think what I would like people to take away from any sort of walking tour that they go on is not just that, oh, this history is really interesting, but also it can be very fun to learn about. It can be very entertaining. And I think and within reason, with while being like mindful and respectful of the history you're sharing, it's if you're an engaging speaker, if you're able to connect the people that are on the tour with the stories, like, because these are stories of not just buildings but real people as well, like you and me. If you're able to draw people in and captivate them by connecting them to these other human beings in some way, excite them, keep things dynamic and jazzy, I would love people to come away from any tour that I've given and say, wow, that was really fun and I really learned a lot. Because I think we as historians have then accomplished one of the things that we set out to do, which is to inspire people and show the ways in which history is seen and present in our own lives every day. That's the big takeaway that I would like people to have. It doesn't have to be a specific fact. It doesn't have to be a specific site, but wow, that was really interesting and really fun. I'm glad that I did that.
Yeah, you want the guy who's like, my stupid brother Gary dragged me out here, but I actually had a good time. I was expecting to
Exactly.
hate this, and whatever. Gary still
Exactly.
sucks, but I had fun. Right?
We're going
Like,
to talk about this when we get home.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so, what do you do to like try to make it that level of engaging and jazzy out of topics that not everybody finds you know the sexiest?
Yeah, yes. It's the term that I always use. I think a lot of that has to do with delivery as well. As goofy as that sounds, I try really, really hard and not always successfully, but to like memorize my script before I go out there. That way I'm not having to like thumb through notes and, oh, what am I talking about? What am I doing? I think I remember when I was leading tours. Oh, hello. Sorry about her.
This German Shepherd, what's going on here?
That's right. Sorry, bud. Um, when I was leading tours of the old penitentiary, one of my supervisors, who was just a great guy, I would be leading these tours of the old pen, and I would sort of be trying to make light of some of the horrible tragedies that happened there. And Anthony, who was one of my supervisors at the time, he said, hey, let's remember that when we're showing people these places and telling them these stories, to be respectful and to be mindful, and not try to make too light of these things these horrible tragedies that took place. And I always try to keep that in mind when I'm giving people tours of places that are maybe heavier or have a bit more sort of nuanced or loaded history, to try to be respectful, but also be, energetic, be enthusiastic, ask people questions, encourage the visitors to ask questions as well. Is there anything that I can clarify? Or where are you from? What story or what connection can you make to this site that we're visiting now? Showing them lots of pictures, historic photos of the places that we're visiting. All of that, just encouraging the engagement with the visitors and making it a mutual experience. I'm learning from you, you're learning from me. I think it's part of keeping it engaging and exciting.
Yeah, and it's important to, connect with them, but also, pay respects to the history, because, as anybody who's ever maybe told a ill-timed joke in the middle of a room,
Oh,
right?
yes.
Like, you don't want to be making jokes about the penitentiary while
Right.
in the penitentiary in front of a bunch of convicted felons, right? Right? Like, you gotta know your audience and
Exactly.
know when to deliver your jokes.
Exactly. Yes. Very important. I definitely have delivered many an ill-timed joke in my life.
as
Doing what I
as
do.
as we all have, truly, just something that bombs immediately.
Exactly.
um and I think that there's something really fascinating about digging deep into your town's local lore, right? Like
Yeah.
because you might be the first person digging into it, so it's your own personal Indiana Jones story.
Oh,
Your
the
poster
best.
behind you is just
Yeah.
like every single one of those is an Indiana
Yes.
Jones story.
Yes.
And it always starts with a question of, what the hell is this?
Right. Right. Exactly.
And
Exactly.
that is your perfect starting point. Of, you drive around your neighborhood and you go, what the hell is this?
Yeah. That's absolutely right.
And
Yes.
I think that's all I've got for you. Where can more people find your work if they're interested and they like what you've said today?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. You can always find me at the Boise State History Department. I've got all my information on the faculty page there. You can also find me on Facebook, just Emily Fritchman Mahaney, on Instagram. Yeah, the River Street Walkabout digital walking tour, I would highly recommend people take. You can do it from home as well. If you're ever visiting Boise, you can do it in person, but I'd highly encourage folks. It's free. You can take it just at home and learn about all of these great places and spaces that we've talked about.
I want to thank Emily for helping us remember that local architecture isn't just about aesthetics, it's about story. Whether it's an ornate theater or a modest family home, these buildings help us make sense of where we've come from and what we value. They're not relics, they're reflections, and sometimes preserving them is the most radical form of remembering. You can explore Boise's River Street Walkabout Tour online, or if you're lucky enough to visit, take it on foot. Either way, you'll leave seeing the city a little differently. I'm Justin Mattson, and this has been a story your city forgot. Until next time, go look around. The past is closer than you think.